12, כן. זה יוצא קומה 3. העניין הוא שהכניסה לבניין הוא לא מהרחוב. הוא צריך לרדת מתחת לבניין.
Shalom. Good afternoon. I'm Steve Wernick, Rabbi Wernick, coming to you live on our Beth Tzedec Facebook page, as well as our YouTube channel. And I'm here today with Ori Unterman. Ori was a shinshinit, one of the shinshinim that was in the Greater Toronto area and worked at Beth Tzedec and Robin's Hebrew Academy in 2008, so a few years ago, as she says. And we're happy to be with one of our alumni from our shinshinim, which is a program so important to us, and that expresses our ongoing relationship and commitment to Israel and the people of Israel. And I asked Ori to join us to share with us a little bit about what's happening in Israel on the ground, how are Israelis dealing with the current rocket attack coming from Hamas and Islamic Jihad from Gaza, as well as, the latest disruption and terrible violence that's being perpetrated by extremists. I hope, I imagine, from both Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs in the cities of Israel, especially the mixed cities. Ori, thank you for being here. First and foremost, tell us how you're doing, where you are, and what's been the experience that you have encountered in these last couple of days and weeks.
So first of all, thank you so much, Rabbi Wernick, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to stay in touch with the rest of the community. I'm very happy to speak here with you and the community today. So on the very personal level, for me, things started on Monday evening. At 6 in the evening, I was at home, I was cleaning my apartment, and all of a sudden the siren went off. And for the first time in 7 years, I had to run to the shelter. I actually knocked on my way to on the doors of all my neighbors because most of my neighbors have children. So I wanted to make sure everyone heard the siren, and we ran to the shelter. And we heard three large.
Is the shelter?
Yeah?
The shelter's a shelter in the building, a community shelter, a safe room in your apartment. Which one is it?
So I live So I live in Jerusalem. I didn't mention that. I live in actually kind of a very old building. So we have kind of an underground room for the entire building. It's not a proper shelter, but that's the closest thing that we have here. And as we were standing there, pretty much out of the blue, we heard those like three large booms. And we all opened our cell phones, of course, and we read the reports that they were rockets shot from Gaza towards Jerusalem. After 10 minutes, we all went back to our apartment, and pretty much from that moment, the television was never shut down. Israel is under mass rockets being shot from the Gaza Strip towards the area around Gaza, something that has been happening for the past 20 years. But what is really unique about it this time is, first of all, the shooting towards Jerusalem, and what's happening massively for the past 48 hours is a massive shots of rockets towards the area of Tel Aviv, and last night even a little northern than Tel Aviv. So that's with the border with Gaza. But another thing that is happening all around Israel, unfortunately, for the past 48 hours, especially in the mixed cities, are riots by Israeli Arabs and at the same time by Israeli Jews. People who were up until 48 hours ago living together as neighbors, starting to burn the streets. Last night it was broadcast live. I couldn't believe my eyesight. How a driver was stopped, the door was open, he was pulled out of the car and brutally hit and bruised, and he was harmed very bad, and he was actually had to be sent to the hospital. And these are the sights that we see all around Israel for the past 48 hours.
Are you referring to that's the Arab driver who was pulled and beaten by a Jewish mob? There was also the converse that was attempted, although a policeman was able to come and to stop that at that time.
Exactly. So there was the opposite thing happening actually 24 hours before that. Here in Jerusalem, there were 3 synagogues burned to dust in the city of Lod, which is right next to the Ben Gurion airport. At the same time, there were riots in the southern city of Bat Yam, which is a little southern to Yafo, by Israeli mobs walking north towards Arab neighborhoods in Yafo. And it really feels like things are out of control.
And what are the reactions that you've been hearing from family and friends to this turn of events?
So everyone are terrified. My grandmother lives in the city of Haifa in northern Israel. She moved there 2 years ago. Up until 2 years ago, she used to live in the city of Ashkelon. So her heart is still in Ashkelon, which is about 20 minutes car drive from the city of Gaza. So she's very connected to her friends in the community who are still in the city of Ashkelon. So her headset is all down in the south, pretty much under rocket attacks for the past, again, 3 days. And on the personal level, what we are nervous about, again, is the tension between the Israeli population, between the Jews and the Arabs who live in Israel, because we've never had anything like that.
And you have family and friends all over Israel, I'd imagine. What are you hearing from people that are in the Tel Aviv area in particular that's been bombarded? How are they
People
managing?
in Tel Aviv, so people in Tel Aviv haven't really been sleeping for the past 2 nights because the rockets, today we also had another rocket around 2:30 in the afternoon being shot, I think another round about an hour ago. But for the past 2 days, it has been just during the night times. So starting from 8 up until 4 a.m., you hear the siren, you run to the shelter, and you go back. And it's this unbelievable reality. Like living normal lives. Israel started to go back to what we knew before COVID, and now all of a sudden it's been blocked and disturbed. And a lot of us actually carry the PTSD, whether it's from living under the rockets or serving in the Israeli army, and all the sirens are really kind of like flooding all those emotions back again.
Is there what seems different this time around?
Honestly, it's what's happening with Israeli Arabs. I personally don't remember anything like that. So as my parents, the only closest thing we remember is reading in the history books about the pogroms that happened also in Israel, but also all around the diaspora, all around the world towards Jewish community. But that's something that happened, the last time in the late 40s, in the early 50s. We haven't really had anything like that. And as someone who lives in Jerusalem, I have friends who are Israeli Arabs. And yesterday, instead of going to my regular coffee place in the Machne market, which is by Jewish ownership and in a Jewish neighborhood, I chose to go to a different one in the Christian Quarter. In the old city, belongs to a Muslim family. And I know them very well because sometimes I had my coffee there, and the tension in the air was so high, and we sat and we talked, and we had the exact same feeling. We said, like, you and I, we're neighbors. We have this good relationship. We're friends. But unfortunately, once the sun goes down and the good people, if we could call it like that, stay at home, the minority who are violent and don't want to live together, going out to the streets, and it's terrifying. We've never experienced something like that before.
What do you think are some of the circumstances that have allowed for that to take place at this moment?
Wow, you're asking a big question because I think it's a combination of a lot of small things. For example, I think that I don't even know how to start to answer that question. First of all, I think that the identity of the Israeli Arabs is very complicated. Because the question of how do you identify with the Jewish state while you're not part of the Jewish world, you're not part of the Jewish people. It's a question that should be dealt with, and I feel like the state of Israel hasn't really been talking about it since the establishment of the state of Israel. So this is to begin with. Another thing I think is something that we all experience is part of the effect of the COVID. After being locked at home for a year, people want to get out, and all kind of thoughts that were kind of kept in the back of people's minds, just kind of that they didn't really think about because the regular life were happening. While you're stuck at home and you're frustrated for so many reasons and for so many things that have nothing to do with it, it's kind of just like an explosion that comes out. Another thing, of course, I think is the day that we mentioned 2 days ago, which is Jerusalem Day, Yom Yerushalayim, when the state of Israel mentioned the end of the 6 Days War. And unfortunately, something that happening in the past, I would say a process that started in the past 30 years, is that this day became kind of a statement that the state of Israel took over what we call Eastern Jerusalem, which is happening practically, like when you color it in political colors, it might cause a conflict. And while it's happening at the same time of the month of Ramadan, which is the holiest month for Muslims, which is being celebrated here in Jerusalem. And the Israeli police is trying to keep it calm and not make it turn into a larger riot. The tension is becoming very high because it feels like on one hand, Israel gives the Jews a free hand to celebrate and are blocking the Muslim community from celebrating their own holiday. So I feel like it's a combination of a lot of different things coming together. Of course, the fact that the elections in the Palestinian Authority were canceled is also a part of it. The fact that Israel doesn't have a government for the past 2 years and we're still working on it is also affecting. And of course, something that I'm sure that everyone heard about is the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, which is here in Jerusalem. It's a debate that is happening since 1967 regarding the Jewish property that is there, that was built in the end of the 19th century, and whether it should go back to Jewish ownership or should the Muslim family who's living there since 1948 should stay there. So I really feel that it's the combination of all those things together that created this, explosion. I'm sorry I'm using that term, but that's the only one that I can use.
Those things, I happen to agree with you, right? That it's not like any one thing, that this is a very complex circumstance, and there have been years of little kind of things that have just come together, and then at this moment have boiled over, probably for the reasons that you've said. And yet people, I think, still confuse the challenges of those complicated conflicts with almost as if a justification for Hamas and Islamic Jihad to rain terror on cities and on civilians in this way. To what extent do you think, and certainly you hear that in the international media and around the world, are Israelis paying attention to the international media like that, or are they just more focused right now on their own Dalet Amot in terms of what's in front of them, in terms of their own safety and security?
So we see both. Honestly, I think we're practically we're dealing more with our current reality at this very moment, because while you have sirens that doesn't allow you to sleep, you're dealing with this first because this is your physical present reality. But we are exposed very much to what's happening in the media in the world, and it's hard for us to see. For me, on the personal level, and I know that also for a lot of my friends, that the picture is not being fully painted sometimes in the English-speaking media. This is the one that I'm exposed to, the international media. And this is very frustrating. And the fact that, please don't get me wrong, I think that every person are entitled for their own opinion, are also entitled, to share it and spread it. But it doesn't feel that great when someone who doesn't have all the information decide for you what's better for you, and for your actual safety. So we are exposed to it.
What gives you comfort? What helps you and Israelis find resiliency at moments such as these?
So first of all, there are a lot of locals initiatives about co-living that being ran by Jews and Arabs. If it's by people who happen to work together or leaders in different fields. And honestly, just like, knowing that we have backup from the Jewish community all around the world, it means the world for us. Because at the moment it feels like we are under attack, and that the world doesn't understand it. And just knowing that we have a friend uh, is extremely meaningful.
You were sharing with me that when you were here in 2008, as someone who just finished high school, it was funny. During Operation Cast Lead, you were here. I was in Israel during that time. But you shared with me the shinshinim surprise and incredible, being incredibly touched by the way in which this community showed its support. What do you remember from that experience?
I remember being away from home. I think it was just after my 18th birthday. I was very young. And on the news, everything sounds so much worse. And all of a sudden we go to Beth Tzedec. And I don't need to tell you, but in Canada, you schedule everything in advance. And that was something that was organized just within 24 hours. And we go into Beth Tzedec and we're part of 5,000 people who are supporting our families and our friends. And I've never seen anything like that in my life. And you just shared with me that tonight the UJA will run an online support in Israel and
a virtual rally.
Thank you, virtual rally. Thank you so much for that. And I approach each and everyone who hears us right now. If you're participating and if you can share and make sure that the people here in Israel will be aware to that, that will mean the world for us. Especially when everything is online and it's really easy just to share, to send a link to someone that you know in Israel. Because as much as you hug us from abroad, we don't always feel that. And for me to be exposed for it, it meant the world.
Well, Ori, we are sending chibuk and chizuk, hugs and strength to you, to your family, to the entire country and nation. We hope and pray for peace. We at Beth Tzedec, we just issued a statement in which we condemned the terror attacks, the rocket attacks from Gaza. We expressed our unwavering support for Israel's not only right to exist and its right to defend itself, but its obligation to do so for its citizens, and also grief for the loss of life for everyone who lives in this region. As many have said, an unfortunate reality when these tensions rise is that people die. And we should never be anything other than sad of that reality. So we express that as well as our prayer for peace. Hopefully, maybe next week you'll join us again for a few minutes, just check in, see how you're doing, and get a perspective from people that are there and living through this at the moment. I want to thank you for your time today. I want to encourage anybody who's watching to join. If you're in the GTA, join our virtual rally this evening, sponsored through UJA Federation. If you happen to be in another community, anywhere in North America or around the world, join whatever community you can, your local community, or I'm sure the Jewish Agency, the WZO, Jewish Federations of North America, Karen Hayesod, all of the acronyms of the Jewish community will be doing something to express its support and solidarity with Israel at this time. We pray for the peace of Jerusalem and for the peace of Israel and all her people. Thanks, Ori.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Take care.